Others, who traverse worlds, often become invincible protagonists or reincarnated celestial kings. But Ramon finds himself transported into the role of the ultimate villain in the latter stages of a novel. At this point, the protagonist, Bob, has maxed out every buff and gear imaginable. And to fit the grand finale, it is inevitable that Ramon, as the villain, meets his demise, sitting upon his throne with a face full of gloom. Ramon has just finished integrating the memories of his two lives. As the supreme antagonist destined to fall in the climactic battle, he is the tyrannical emperor who ruled through bloodshed and fear, the very embodiment of evil that the world unites to overthrow. In the novel's conclusion, he is annihilated, his soul shattered into oblivion by Bob, the protagonist, while his once mighty army betrays him en masse. Though the legions beneath him now seem imposing and orderly, it is clear that they are already plotting rebellion, held back only by their current lack of courage. Taking a deep breath, Ramon reflects on the inevitable fate of all final bosses: betrayal, defeat, and obliteration. With the grand finale approaching and Bob on the verge of reaching full power, it seems there is nothing left but to await his death. The frustration of dying so soon after transmigrating weighs heavily on him. Just then, Ramon's narrowed eyes glint with a sudden idea. There might be someone who can help him weather this catastrophe. Lily, the female lead of the story and princess of the Purple Serenity Celestial Palace. In the original novel, Bob fell hopelessly in love with Lily at first sight. But Ramon and Lily had a history of unresolved conflicts. Long ago, in a fit of anger, Lily declared that she would marry anyone capable of killing Ramon. This vow became one of Bob's driving motivations to grow stronger. Yet, in the original plot, even after defeating Ramon, Bob failed to win Lily's heart. This lingering regret was one of the novel's greatest ironies. Though a central figure, Lily was not destined to belong to anyone, not even the protagonist. Her extraordinary and otherworldly ability to be immortal and indestructible set her apart from all others. Even if obliterated, she could reform and rise again, for she was a being born of heaven and earth itself. As long as the world existed, she would never perish, a true immortal, eternal as the heavens. Only Lily herself knew of this unparalleled power, and she had never revealed it to anyone. Furthermore, her immortality could be shared, but only with her chosen partner. Whoever earned her favor would share her undying existence. However, Lily held no regard for any man in this world, rendering her unattainable. A cold smile spread across Ramon's lips as he stood from his throne. If he could obtain Lily's immortality, the inevitability of his demise as the ultimate villain could be broken. With that thought, his figure vanished on the spot. Heading straight for the Purple Serenity Celestial Palace, in the original novel, Bob had visited Lily just before the final showdown, only to be turned away without seeing her. But if Ramon arrived now, he might cross paths with Bob, and if the opportunity presented itself, he would not hesitate to kill him. After all, before Bob's final breakthrough, he posed no match for Ramon. Meanwhile, at the gates of the Purple Serenity Celestial Palace, Bob stood, his hands clasped respectfully as he addressed two celestial maidens guarding the entrance. Please inform the princess that Bob humbly seeks an audience. The maidens bowed slightly and replied, "We are sorry, but our princess is in seclusion and cannot meet anyone." Bob's expression faltered for a moment before he nodded politely. "Then please relay my words. I have obtained the supreme origin and will soon enter closed-door training to ascend to the infinite realm. Once I emerge, it will be the day the Tyrant falls. Please ask the princess to await this news." With those words, Bob glanced once more toward the palace gates before turning to leave. Watching him depart, one of the celestial maidens muttered, "Bob is truly formidable. If he really defeats the Tyrant, our princess may have to marry him, and the Purple Serenity Celestial Palace would become part of the alliance." The other maiden sighed in agreement. However, just as they stepped back inside, both froze mid-step, their brows furrowing as they turned their gazes skyward. A blood-red distortion in space appeared above, radiating a powerful and unfamiliar aura that enveloped the entire palace. Someone dares to forcibly intrude into the Purple Serenity Celestial Palace. Their expressions darkened immediately. Within moments, silhouettes of celestial maidens emerged from the palace ethereal halls, each one exuding an icy aura as they took to the skies to confront the intruder. How is this possible? The palace barrier was personally constructed by the palace master. Only a divine sovereign could breach it. Could it be a divine sovereign has come to challenge us? Such audacity, even Bob, the leader of the Heavenly Alliance, would not dare to trespass here. The gathered celestial maidens stared tensely at the blood-red spatial distortion. As the disturbance slowly dissipated, a tall figure emerged, standing with hands clasped behind his back. Long hair cascaded down his back, and a pair of blood-red eyes glimmered at with an imperial arrogance that seemed to regard all beneath heaven as insignificant. Ramon, the emperor and tyrant of the world, had arrived. Recognizing him, the celestial maidens' faces darkened further. Though they did not immediately attack, their wariness was evident. With his presence, an eerie silence fell over the entire palace. Bob was just here, wasn't he? Ramon's calm voice broke the silence. A silver-haired maiden in white, her appearance as delicate as her voice was resolute, stepped forward. Indeed, Bob was here earlier, but he has already left. Ramon smirked faintly. Of course, a protagonist's luck never falters before the final act. Had I arrived a moment earlier, he wouldn't have escaped. He shook his head. It seems killing him before the grand finale is out of the question. Very well, I'll wait until the final act. His blood-red gaze swept over the maidens. Where is your princess? Our princess is in seclusion. If you have any matters to discuss, you may tell us instead. The silver-haired maiden, Carol, responded firmly. Ramon's eyes glinted coldly. Do you not understand? I am not someone who needs permission. If I wish to see her, she will see me whether she wills it or not. Carol's expression tightened, but she held her ground. Our princess does not see anyone during her seclusion. Please leave. Ramon ignored her words, his figure striding forward toward the palace interior. Since she won't come out, I'll go wake her myself. Seeing this, Carol gritted her teeth and stepped in his path. If you insist on disturbing her seclusion, you'll have to go through me first. With her declaration, the surrounding celestial maidens unleashed their combined powers, forming a colossal formation that enveloped the palace in its majestic glow. However, with a mere wave of his hand, Ramon shattered the formation effortlessly, its remnants dissolving into specks of light. Coughing up blood, Carol and the other maidens regrouped, their determination undeterred despite the overwhelming gap in power. If you wish to disturb our princess, you'll have to step over our corpses first, Carol declared, her voice resolute. Ramon chuckled lightly, though there was a trace of exasperation in his tone. All this trouble just to have a conversation. Do you really think I've come to kill her? At that moment, a cool, melodic voice echoes through the air, silencing all. Enough, stand down. With the arrival of that voice, petals cascaded from the sky like a rain of blossoms. A graceful figure appeared, draped in a flowing gown of soft lilac. Her beauty so radiant, it seemed to dim the light of the world. It was Lily, the princess of the Purple Serenity Celestial Palace, the woman the world hailed as its most beautiful and untouchable. Princess! The celestial maidens bowed in unison, relief washing over their faces. Lily's serene gaze fixed on Ramon, her voice as cold and clear as an alpine spring. What brings you here, Tyrant? Ramon's blood-red eyes met hers. I've come to seek your counsel, Your Highness. Tell me, what must I do to defeat Bob? What does your matter have to do with me? Lily withdrew her gaze. It is, of course, connected to you. I clasped my hands behind my back and continued. If I fall, as per the promise you made back then, you will have to marry Bob. Hearing this, Lily's delicate brows knitted slightly. You never expected, I added with a faint smile, that there would truly be someone in this world capable of standing against me, did you? You thought your promise was one that could never be fulfilled. Yet, here emerges Bob, a man of extraordinary fortune. Lily remained silent. Indeed, she had once thought this way. If I truly lose, I stepped closer. Will you honor your promise and give yourself to Bob in marriage? Still, Lily said nothing. Of course, she was unwilling. Even if Bob now stood at the pinnacle of the world, even if Bob might ultimately defeat Ramon, her heart had never stirred for him in the slightest. I raised my hand slowly, tilting her delicate, snow-white chin upward. Knowing what you know now, why were you so impulsive back then? Why make such a reckless promise? Lily remained silent, but her lips pressed into a thin line. She couldn't deny that her words had been uttered in a moment of rashness, yet it had all been his fault, Ramon's fault. Back then, he had forcibly taken something precious from her, even gone so far as to. Her thoughts halted abruptly, and her eyes snapped to me, a cold reprimand in her voice. How dare you? She swatted my hand away and took a step back, her face colored with both anger and shame. This was the second time a man had touched her. Both times it had been this tyrant. I merely chuckled lightly. If you don't want to marry someone else, then why not join forces with me together? We can ensure my UN defeat able position. Dream on. Lily's beautiful eyes glared at me, her voice icy. And even if I wanted to help you, I wouldn't be of any use. Against Bob in his infinite realm, even someone at a divine sovereign level like you would stand no chance. You can, I interrupted with a wicked smirk. All you need to do is share your immortality with me. Her pupils constricted instantly, her heart sinking. How could he possibly know about that? Her immortality, her eternal indestructibility abilities she was born with, a gift of the heavens and earth, was something only she knew. Furthermore, while this power could indeed be shared with a partner, the secret had never been divulged to anyone. Feigning ignorance, Lily replied calmly, I have no idea what you are talking about. I possess no such ability. I let out a soft laugh. I know you are unwilling. You should be. But when did I ever say I needed your consent? Her expression darkened instantly. What are you implying? What do you plan to do? Her voice turned stern, though a flicker of unease showed in her eyes. There is no such thing as true immortality, Lily declared, her tone cold and firm. Leave. The promise I made back then was a foolish mistake, spoken in a moment of youthful arrogance. If you hold a grudge because of it, fine. I am no match for you. Do what you will. Kill me, torture me. I won't resist. But what you seek from me, I do not have. It's always the same. I shook my head with a smirk. What I seek lies in your hands, yet you stubbornly refuse to give it, forcing me to take it myself. Blood-red eyes locked onto hers as I stepped forward. What are you doing, Ramon? As she exclaimed, retreating a step, her vigilance sharpening. Whether you have it or not, I sneered. I'll know soon enough. A devilish grin curved my lips as crimson energy erupted from me, surging across the entirety of the purple serenity celestial palace. No man in this world deserves you, not Bob. Not anyone, I murmured as I seized Lily, diving downward with her in my grasp. A cold laugh escaped me. You were meant to belong to me. I couldn't deny this woman truly was unique. For a fleeting moment, I felt a genuine impulse to make her mine. The next moment, I flung her forcefully onto one of the great branches of the celestial tree. Her figure crashed into a sea of scarlet petals, sending them flying into the air like a bloody rain. She struggled to her feet, gripping her sword tightly, preparing to strike again, but I was already upon her, gripping her slender shoulder. A blood-red barrier formed instantly, enclosing the two of us within the tree's branches. Ramon, how dare you? Lily's voice trembled with anger and fear. Never had she imagined this tyrant would go so far. He truly knew her secret. I leaned closer, my smile wicked. What in this world do you think I would dare, Lily? Her heart pounded wildly as she watched my hand inch toward her. Outside the barrier, the celestial maidens looked on, stunned and helpless. None of them possessed the strength to break through the barrier. Time seemed to stretch into eternity before the barrier finally dissolved. Ramon, I'll kill you. A furious roar echoed through the palace grounds as I leapt from the celestial tree, a satisfied smile on my lips. Behind me, Lily charged forward with her sword, her strikes wild and unrelenting. You see, I called back, dodging her attacks with ease. If you had simply given it to me, this wouldn't have been necessary. Shut up! Lily's voice was like a tempest, her sword slicing through the air with unrestrained fury. The celestial maidens stood frozen, watching the spectacle in disbelief. Somehow, amidst the chaos, the scene carried a strange undertone, as though the two were bickering lovers. Sword energy rippled through the skies, shattering what remained of the palace's once pristine barrier. Lily struck again, but I evaded and seized her wrist, only for her to twist free and retreat once more. The celestial maidens exchanged bewildered glances. Was the tyrant courting their princess? No man in the world could possibly be a match for her, except perhaps Ramon. A strange thought took root in their minds. The two, despite their stark differences, seemed inexplicably suited for each other. Above the ruined palace, Lily's chest heaved with anger. Her violet eyes locked onto me with murderous intent. Now, I said with a faint smile, no one will ever be able to kill me. You call this helping me? Lily spat, her voice trembling with rage. I've spared you from your promise, haven't I? I replied with a faint smile as the air around me distorted. With a casual wave, I vanished. Lily's sword cleaved deep through empty space, her furious cry echoing across the heavens. Ramon, I swear, I'll kill you. The celestial maidens looked on, baffled. It was the first time they had ever seen their princess. So enraged, Carol approached cautiously. Princess, what happened? Lily hesitated, her grip tightening on her sword as she suppressed her emotions. Looking at the devastation around her, she forced herself to calm down. Do not speak of this, she said coldly. No one must know of what happened today. Carol nodded. Whatever had transpired, it was clear the princess wished it buried. As Lily surveyed the wreckage of her palace, her frustration boiled beneath her composed exterior. Ramon had humiliated her twice now, and she vowed she would have her revenge. Yet, in the depths of her mind, a flicker of unease surfaced. Ramon now possessed her immortality, a power that made him untouchable. However, even immortality came with limitations. While he could not die, his cultivation could be lost upon rebirth. What was his plan? How would he ensure his power remained intact even after death? On the other side, I smirked. With immortality in my grasp and the ability to infuriate Bob, I had achieved 2 victories in one stroke. How would Bob react when he learned that his perfect goddess now belonged to me? The thought amused me greatly, but I was not careless. I knew that immortality alone was not enough. After the grand finale, I would need to preserve my cultivation. To do so, I needed rare materials of legend. The road to the infinite realm was treacherous, but not impossible. After all, I was the only one in history who had reached it through sheer will, and I intended to remain at the top. A complete plan took shape in my mind. Meanwhile, in the grand hall of the Spirit Clan, all the senior members of the clan were gathered to deliberate a critical decision, their stance in the upcoming confrontation. A single misstep could spell catastrophic consequences. Our Spirit Clan harbors no enmity toward anyone, the clan leader declared solemnly. However, years ago, we inadvertently aided Alliance leader Bob in defending a stronghold. Now, with the looming battle between Bob and the Tyrant Ramon, it is clear that, given Ramon's nature, the Spirit Clan cannot remain uninvolved. This final battle will reshape the balance of the world. If Bob wins, it will usher in his era. If he loses, no one else in the world will have the strength or resolve to challenge Ramon. The Tyrant will dominate eternally, and anyone associated with Bob will be obliterated. Therefore, this battle is of paramount importance to us. Ramon must fall. He must die. With the decisive tone set, the clan leader continued. Bob has called upon all extraordinary beings to join the Heavenly Alliance and unite against the Tyrant. It is time for the Spirit Clan to make its choice. Typically, there are 3 options in a time like this. First, join the Heavenly Alliance and fight alongside Bob against Ramon. Second, align with Ramon's empire and oppose Bob. Third, remain neutral and abstain from intervention. Yet, given Ramon's tyranny and ruthless nature, we cannot in good conscience side with him. The voices of the Spirit Clan's elders echoed through the hall, aligned in their conviction. The uprising of the world is the will of the people and the direction of fate. The Tyrant is destined to fall. From every perspective, we should join the Heavenly Alliance. In that case, the clan leader proclaimed, the Spirit Clan shall mobilize and head for the Heavenly Abyss battlefield to aid Alliance leader Bob in his campaign. United with the world, the Tyrant is doomed. The future will no longer belong to Ramon but to the era of the Heavenly Alliance, to the era of Bob. By following Bob, the Spirit Clan shall prosper. His words resonated through the hall, met with vigorous nods of agreement. Joining the Heavenly Alliance seemed to be the most righteous and promising path. How laughable. Suddenly, an unfamiliar voice interrupted, sharp and jarring. An era of Bob, a world ruled by Bob. Is that all you see? The clan leader and the elders turned toward the source, frowning. At the entrance, a wooden wheelchair rolled slowly into the hall, bearing a pale, frail-looking woman. Her voice carried a bitter sarcasm as she continued. Pray, tell me. Sis, do you recall the chaos of the past? The world once burned with endless wars, nations rising and falling. Clans decimated, lives consumed in blood and fire. Corpses piled high. Rivers ran red, and the looting and pillaging knew no bounds. In that age of turmoil, even our Spirit Clan nearly met its end. It was the emergence of Ramon's empire, the rise of the Emperor, that put an end to it all. It was he who swept through the 8 directions, unified the lands, extinguished the flames of endless war, and brought an end to the ceaseless strife. The peace we enjoy today exists only because of him. Without Ramon, the Spirit Clan would have been obliterated long ago. Her voice reverberated through the hall, shaking the elders to their core. For the Emperor and the world, his deeds are nothing short of divine intervention. He forged this era, and this era created Bob in such times. We should not oppose the Emperor, on the contrary, we should stand with him, side by side. Her words were met with visible discomfort. The clan elders exchanged uneasy glances, and one elder scoffed. The tyrant who killed countless and annihilated nations shall we to thank him for such atrocities. If Bob defeats Ramon, the world will belong to Bob. Who would dare defy him then? The woman chuckled coldly. Since the dawn of time, has anyone other than the Emperor been able to subdue the entire world? Do you truly believe Bob has the strength to rule as the Emperor has? Bob's current power stems from the supreme origin, granting him a fleeting grasp of the infinite realm. But this is temporary. Once the battle ends, his cultivation will revert to the divine sovereign realm. And tell me, would the other divine sovereigns of this world willingly bow to him? If you were divine sovereign, would you? Silence fell upon the hall. The elders had no response. The clan leader's face darkened, and he slammed his hand on the armrest of his throne. How dare you spew such treacherous nonsense and sow discord within our ranks? The Heavenly Alliance boasts countless strong allies, and we are united behind Bob. After we destroy the Tyrant, who in the world would dare rebel against us? You, a mere wretch who should never have been allowed to stay within the Spirit Clan, dare to disrupt this sacred meeting. What is your intent? The clan leader's voice grew colder. Is this because of your hatred toward the clan for executing your mother all those years ago? Do you now seek to drag the Spirit Clan into ruin? The elders chimed in, their voices laced with contempt. Of such audacity, this vile creature has harbored treacherous intentions all along. She is but an ungrateful bastard, her bloodline impure and unworthy of the Spirit Clan. Sitting in her wheelchair, the woman gave a bitter smile. Clan leader, Leo, know my position well. My words may carry little weight, but what I have said today is the unvarnished truth. I can leave the Spirit Clan if that is your will, but I beg you, do not lead the clan down a path of no return. With that, she turned her wheelchair to leave. The clan leader's voice rang out sharply. Everything you possess was given to you by the Spirit Clan. If you wish to leave, you must first return what belongs to us. Your bloodline, your talents, they come from the Spirit Clan. Strip her of her cultivation and shatter her spirit seed. Make her a cripple, unable to cultivate for eternity. Several figures leapt forward at his command, and a wave of overwhelming energy bore down on Leo. Her cultivation was instantly destroyed, her spirit seed shattered, and her meridian as crushed. She coughed up blood as her wheelchair splintered beneath the force, sending her crumpling to the ground, broken and defeated. Leo lay motionless. From this moment on, she was nothing more than a mortal satisfied. The clan leader sneered, now crawl away. From this day forth, you are no longer a member of the Spirit Clan. You share no ties with us. How noble of the Spirit Clan, Leo muttered bitterly, laughing with a mix of madness and despair. I look forward to seeing the bright future you will carve for yourselves. I truly do. She gritted her teeth and dragged her ruined body across the floor. As her hand reached the threshold of the hall, a blood-red distortion appeared before her, rippling in the air from within the crimson void. A tall figure stepped forward. It was Ramon. The moment his presence graced the hall, every member of the Spirit Clan froze, fear twisting their faces. Ramon, the clan leader's voice trembled. Prepare for battle. Summon the Heavenly Alliance. But I merely stood there, glancing at the broken figure of Leo before striding into the hall. The crowd parted instinctively, as though an invisible force compelled them to make way. I sat upon the high throne, my voice calm and commanding. In ancient times, a divine artifact known as the primordial orb was born into this world. It possesses the power to gather the essence of heaven and earth, nurturing all it touches. Your ancestors built the Spirit Clan around this treasure, and it has been guarded by your clan for generations. Now, hand it over. The whole fell into stunned silence. The clan leader trembled, but dared not defy me, bowing deeply. He retrieved the orb and presented it with trembling hands. I took it and stood. I will not destroy you now, but since you claim I am destined to fail, let us see what fate has in store. Remember, survival is not guaranteed. As I reached the doorway, my gaze fell on Leo A. What is your name? Leo A, she replied weakly. Without another word, I lifted her into my arms, and with a flash of crimson energy, we disappeared. Someone like you, I said with a faint smile, is perfectly suited to be my strategist. Leo's eyes widened in shock. followed by a surge of uncontrollable elation rising from the depths of her heart. I am willing to dedicate my life to your majesty, to serve you with unyielding loyalty. In that moment, a surge of immense spiritual energy burst forth from my hand, flowing directly into Leo's body. Instantly, her broken, frail form was restored. Her shattered spirit sea was completely rebuilt, and even her long-blinded eyes regained their sight. It was as though she had been reborn, overcome with emotion. Leo's face flushed crimson, and she nearly fell to her knees. "Thank you, Your Majesty." I extended a small pill to her. "This elixir will allow you to reach the heaven profound realm and further enhance your cultivation talents. This is the extent of what I can do for you. The path of cultivation from here on will depend on your own effort. Thank you, Your Majesty, for this act of immeasurable kindness." Leo respectfully received the elixir and consumed it immediately. Within moments, spiritual energy surged into her newly restored spirit sea, and her cultivation rapidly ascended to the heaven profound realm. She could clearly feel that her talents had been elevated to an unprecedented level. It was a rebirth from ruin, a complete transformation. I turned to her with a calm gaze. "Now tell me, what are your thoughts on the current situation and the future? Do you believe I will lose to Bob?" Leo nodded slightly. That Bob, by borrowing the power of the Supreme Origin, has indeed ascended to the infinite realm, albeit temporarily. It is a power unparalleled in this world. Your Majesty, I fear you may truly not be his equal. However, if you are defeated, and Bob reverts to the divine sovereign realm after exhausting the Supreme Origin's power, he will lack the means to suppress the chaos that will inevitably ensue. The world, absent Your Majesty's control, will descend into utter turmoil once again. She paused for a moment, her tone steady yet contemplative. This so-called will of the people, an inevitable tide of destiny, are nothing more than illusions. The truth is that Your Majesty's iron rule has loomed over this world as an insurmountable mountain, haunting everyone's hearts. Bob's rise offers them the hope of destroying this mountain, of erasing their inner demons. That is why they rally around him, eager to push over a toppling giant. Their support for Bob is false. Their fear of Your Majesty is real. Should Bob fail, the people's fear of Your Majesty will return, and no one will dare defy you again. She let out a soft sigh. But should Your Majesty fall, the people's fleeting support for Bob will dissipate. They are not loyal to him. They are loyal only to the infinite realm he temporarily commands. Without that power, Bob is no different from any other mortal. This world will never bow to anyone else. Only Your Majesty has the strength to dominate it for eternity. Without you, the world will once again descend into endless bloodshed, chaos, and slaughter, a storm far beyond Bob's ability to quell. However, at present, I cannot think of any method to counter Bob's overwhelming advantage. I smiled faintly at her candor. You are indeed insightful. Leo, you are worthy of a place in the Roman Empire. I admit that the Supreme Origin makes Bob an unparalleled force. Even I cannot rival it. After all, he is the fully empowered protagonist, and the Supreme Origin is the ultimate existence in this world. Hearing this, Leo's brows furrowed slightly. Your Majesty spoke earlier of rebuilding the Roman Empire. What does that mean? Why does the Roman Empire need to be rebuilt? And how can there possibly be time for such an endeavor amidst the present turmoil? Her confusion was clear, and she hesitated before adding, "Could Your Majesty's words perhaps refer to the future, a plan to reshape the empire after the final battle?" I nodded lightly. Precisely. Since this world finds my rule so distasteful, it is time for a thorough reformation. We will start with the Roman Empire. But the Roman Empire already commands legions of elite soldiers and countless powerful warriors, Leo said cautiously, her eyes fixed on me. Why does it still require reorganization? Unless there are traitors within the empire. You are correct, I replied calmly. Come with me, and you shall see for yourself. At that moment, within the grand and resplendent palace of the Roman Empire, countless figures gathered in the great hall. Each was imposing and powerful, exuding an aura of supreme might, all of them peak divine sovereigns. They were the very core of the Ramon Empire's leadership. That Bob truly has some skill. One of the generals, Stephen, remarked with a sneer. His temporary ascent to the infinite realm has undoubtedly shaken the world. Do you think he poses a real threat to His Majesty? Another general sighed. The Supreme Origin is the most potent force in existence, an unparalleled power of the heavens and earth. Even His Majesty once got the word for it, yet it fell into Bob's hands. We have followed His Majesty for countless years, waging war across the lands, painting the battlefields with blood. Yet now it seems we may all be buried at the threshold of a new era. Despite our unmatched power, it appears our end is nigh. How can we accept this? One of the commanders finally broke the silence, unable to suppress his frustration. Gentlemen, do you truly intend to resign yourselves to this fate? We possess such great strengths. Anywhere else, we could achieve glory and renown. Why should we follow His Majesty into certain death? Would it not be wiser to turn away from this doomed path? His words sent ripples of unease through the hall. Some nodded thoughtfully, while others cast furtive glances at each other. Stephen smirked coldly, though outwardly he bellowed, "How dare you speak such treason? Do you mean to betray His Majesty?" The commander immediately lowered his head, cowed by Stephen's rebuke, but the seeds of dissent had been sown. Another general spoke up hesitantly. What he said, "It's not entirely without merit. We've followed Ramon for countless years, slaughtered untold thousands. Yet what have we gained in return? We've spent our lives in darkness, steeped in bloodshed and tyranny. Perhaps it is time to break free from this cycle and seek the light." Yet another voice chimed in. "The Tyrant is in seclusion now. This is our only chance to escape his grasp." As Stephen feigned outrage, though inwardly he was pleased. "His Majesty has given you everything. Yet you would betray him. You are nothing but ungrateful wretches." However, when pressed further, Stephen began to waver. "Very well," he finally said, feigning reluctance. "If we must choose, then let us feign loyalty for now. When the final battle arrives, we will strike Ramon from the shadows and ensure Bob's victory. Only then can we guarantee our survival." The generals nodded in agreement. But before they could act, a sudden, resonant hum filled the hall. A blood-red distortion appeared on the throne, and from it, my figure emerged. The entire hall fell silent, and every face turned ashen with fear. I sat calmly on the throne, my blood-red eyes sweeping over the kneeling figures below. "You were saying," I began coldly, "that it is time to betray me?" Stephen trembled, bowing deeply. "Your Majesty, it is all a misunderstanding. I was merely testing their loyalty to you." "Testing, you say?" I replied with a faint smile. "And what of your own loyalty?" The Stephen and the others slammed their heads to the ground, their voices trembling with terror. "Your Majesty, have mercy." I gazed down at them, my voice steady yet merciless. "You wish to leave? Very well. But know this: everything you have gained in my empire, you will return. When you entered my service, you were nothing but Saint Marshal called Iva Torres. You will leave as such." With a wave of my hand, a blood-red formation enveloped the hall. The traitors screamed as their vast spiritual power was drained, leaving them broken and powerless. After a long moment, my hand clenched suddenly, and Stephen and the others coughed up mouthfuls of blood. Their cultivation, once so formidable, plummeted uncontrollably. "Now take your useless selves and your worthless subordinates, and leave," I said coldly, despite the countless grievances that surely festered within their hearts. Stephen and the rest dared not utter a single word. Biting their tongues, they staggered to their feet and left in disgrace. As the last of them departed, the grand hall grew silent, leaving only Leo A and me within its vast expanse. Who would have thought that the Empire's core leaders would be so disgracefully incompetent? Leo sighed softly. I offered a faint smile. What else could you expect? The fate of every great villain is the same, to stand alone at the end. Betrayed by all, facing the world as an enemy, only to be defeated by the so-called hero of justice. But your Majesty still commands the legendary 3,000 demon army. That alone should suffice, Ramon. I shook my head, my smile lingering. No, it is far from enough. I will rebuild a far stronger, everlasting empire. After this war, I will ensure that no one in this world will ever have the strength to rebel again. If the world insists on rising against me, then it must be thoroughly cleansed. After this battle, I will see to it that there will never again be another like Bob, who rises from nothing to defy me. I will crush all hope of rebellion and make it clear to the world that the Roman Empire is not merely an insurmountable mountain. It is the very heavens, eternally looming over everyone's heads, unyielding and inescapable. Then your Majesty is confident of victory in this war? Leola asked, gazing intently at me. From the certainty in my voice, it seemed I had already calculated every detail of the future, but I shook my head again, my expression unchanged. Then, what do your Majesty's words mean? If you are not confident of victory, what could possibly remain after this battle? Surely Bob, who opposes you so vehemently, would never allow you the chance to survive. I do not need him to grant me an opportunity. I said with an air of detachment. Even if my soul is shattered, I have my ways to be reborn. So your majesty intends to ensure survival, to rise again after the battle. But even if you manage to reincarnate, you would no longer possess your current cultivation. Rising again would be nearly impossible, would it not? Not nearly impossible, I replied with a quiet laugh. Completely impossible. To start from nothing and once again reach the infinite realm through cultivation alone, it simply cannot be done. That is why I must ensure that when I am reborn, I retain my current strength in the infinite realm. Leo frowned slightly, her brow creased in thought. You are aware, I continued, of places like the heavenly abyss battlefield, places hidden and secure in this vast world. After the battle, I will need such a place to recover my strength. All preparations for survival must be made before the final confrontation. Hearing this, Leo's expression tightened. Does your majesty intend to mimic Bob, finding a hidden sanctuary to recover and regroup in secret? If your majesty truly has a way to retain all your current cultivation after rebirth, this would indeed be the best course of action, but finding such a place will not be easy. There is one possibility, she said after a moment of thought. In the Heavenly Library Pavilion, there is an ancient text known as the Chronicles of Heaven and Earth. If we can obtain it, I may be able to locate such a place for your majesty. Chronicles of Heaven and Earth, I asked, intrigued. It is a divine book born of the heavens and earth, Leola explained. A repository of all history and wisdom. It not only records major events in the world, but also generates profound laws and insights. Anyone capable of comprehending even one of its laws would undergo a complete transformation, shedding their mortal constraints. Bob himself once encountered the Chronicles in his youth. By understanding a single law within its pages, he went from a useless member of his family to one of the most extraordinary figures of his generation. A scholar's ultimate treasure, I remarked, standing. Very well, you will accompany me to retrieve it. At my words, Leo's expression shifted slightly. You find this objectionable? I asked, gazing down at her. After all, it is an ownerless artifact, she replied softly. You are my strategist, I said flatly. If you desire it, then it belongs to you. Remember, in this world, it is not for others to dictate what is right and what is wrong. Leola had no response. She simply nodded, resigning herself to my domineering will. Of course, your majesty, she murmured. It just so happened that I intended to visit the Heavenly Library Pavilion to find someone. This would be a convenient opportunity. The Heavenly Library Pavilion, a towering ancient structure piercing the skies, stood in the Chronicles realm. Despite the many people coming and going, the pavilion remained serene, the atmosphere tranquil. As Leo A and I emerged from a blood-red spatial distortion at its entrance, every gaze turned toward us. For a fleeting second, it was as if the entire world froze. When they recognized me, panic erupted. Faces turned pale, and people scrambled to flee, the once silent pavilion descending into chaos. For the first time, the fabled Heavenly Library Pavilion was filled with commotion. Their fear runs deep, Leola muttered, shaking her head. I cannot understand what they are so afraid of. I said nothing, striding forward into the pavilion. The first floor, once bustling with scholars, emptied the moment they saw me. Those who lingered for even a second quickly bolted, leaving the space eerily silent in the far corner. However, one man remained seated, seemingly indifferent to my arrival. His disheveled hair hung over his face, obscuring most of his features. As he focused on the ancient book in his hands, Leo recognized him immediately. That's Leo, the infamous battle maniac, she whispered. A peak divine sovereign once feared across the land. In his prime, no one dared face him in combat, not because of his strength alone, but because of his madness. He fought without regard for his life or his opponents, driven solely by an insatiable thirst for battle. Leo set his book aside and raised his head, his gaze meeting mine. Ramon, Emperor of the Roman Empire, he said with a cold smile. Why have you come here? If it's the Chronicles of Heaven and Earth you seek, I can tell you now, you won't get it. That book chooses no master, not even a peak divine sovereign. I stepped closer. Is that so? Yes, Leo sneered. I've tried. That damn book refuses everyone. It doesn't care if you're the strongest being alive. He chuckled darkly. Maybe I'll cut it to pieces. You'll find it takes more than brute force, I replied. The Chronicles is a creation of the heavens themselves, to earn its recognition. One must meet its standards. Standards you will never satisfy. Leo burst into laughter. You sure know how to insult someone, Emperor. If you weren't who you are, I'd have cut you down by now. I ignored his bravado. You want answers about this world's darkness, don't you? You've been seeking them in this place. And you know the answers, don't you? Leo asked, his eyes narrowing. I do, I said. But not now. You'll have your answers when I face Bob in our final battle. Leo's grin widened. I look forward to it. A tyrant against the wielder of the supreme origin. How could I miss it? You won't miss it, I said with a faint smile. After this war, I will rebuild a Ramon empire stronger than ever. I'll need subordinates. You'll join me. Leo's expression darkened. And if I refuse? You won't have a choice, I replied flatly. He burst into laughter again. Fine, Emperor, show me your victory. Then I'll decide if you're worthy of my allegiance. I turned away, leading Leo to the higher floors. Behind us, Leo watched with intrigue. What could possibly surpass the supreme origin? He muttered. What is Ramon planning? This will be interesting. As I ascended to the final floor of the Heavenly Library Pavilion, all others fled before Mesa v. one solitary figure who remained. It was an elderly man with snow-white hair, his frail, hunched figure thin and withered. His aged face bore no trace of a beard, only a dense web of wrinkles that seemed to tell the story of 1,000 lifetimes. He was meticulously arranging books on the towering shelves. This man was none other than the keeper of the Heavenly Library Pavilion, known to most simply as Elder Wen. His true name had long been forgotten by the world, and he was revered as a pinnacle existence within the divine sovereign real man, unquestioned scholar and sage in the eyes of the world. When he sensed my arrival, Elder Wen put down the scroll in his hands and turned to face me. The Chronicles of Heaven and Earth may indeed be a divine book born of the heavens, but even it is powerless against the might of the supreme origin. From every perspective, Your Majesty, it is impossible for you to triumph over Alliance Leader Bob. Given your imperial bearing, you should face this truth with acceptance. Why needlessly toil in vain? Hearing this, I responded with a faint smile, while his words bore a semblance of truth. The circumstances had changed ever since I obtained Lily's immortality. Everything had shifted, as if the heavens themselves had ordained it. To the people of the world, Elder Wen continued, perhaps your fall would indeed be a blessing. I chuckled softly. Do you think so too? So even you, a so-called neutral sage, revered by the world, have aligned your heart with Bob. It seems Bob truly lives up to his role as the protagonist. Your Majesty has weighed down upon this world for far too long, Elder Wen replied. The bright moon cannot shine while the stars are dimmed without Your Majesty. The people of this world might finally raise their heads and strive for a brighter future. In the long run, this might indeed be for the better. This, Your Majesty, is simply my humble perspective. I smirked faintly. Humble indeed. So even you would claim to stand above the heavens with your long view. An old man's shallow insights, Elder Wen replied with humility. Hardly worthy of such words. I mean, no offense to Your Majesty. My observations on this war between you and Bob are impartial and devoid of personal involvement. At this, Leo stepped forward. If the Emperor is gone, the world will plunge once more into chaos. Do you truly see regression into an era of bloodshed as progress? Chaos brings only suffering. How can anyone speak of prosperity under such circumstances? Do you expect heroes to emerge from the ashes of a chaotic age? How many eras of turmoil have yielded but a handful of so-called heroes? Elder Wen chose not to argue further. Instead, he shifted the conversation. The Chronicles of Heaven and Earth are above, Your Majesty. If you wish to take it, then do so. But this divine book, born of the heavens, recognizes no master lightly. I doubt even Your Majesty can compel it to submission. The book cannot be conquered by force. It is a matter of fate. I laughed softly and glanced at Leo Abgan. I do not need the Chronicles to recognize me as its master. I need you to master it. Without further words, I ascended with Leo toward the highest level of the pavilion, a unique space entirely detached from the mortal world. Suspended in the center of this isolated chamber floated the legendary Chronicles of Heaven and Earth, exuding an ethereal radiance. Do you have confidence? I asked, looking first at the book, then turning my gaze to Leo as he hesitated briefly before bowing slightly. I do not know. This is my first time encountering the Chronicles, but if I can master it before Bob emerges from seclusion, I will succeed. I will not fail your majesty. I nodded in acknowledgement, saying no more. Raising my hand, I released a surge of blood-red energy, enveloping the floating book entirely. The golden light surrounding the chronicles dissipated, and it transformed into a modest, ancient tome, no more than a foot long, which floated gently into my palm. I handed it to Leo. Thank you, Your Majesty. Leo's voice trembled with excitement as she extended both hands to accept the book, cradling it with the utmost care. With the chronicles of heaven and earth in your possession, you will need no other text. This book alone contains all the knowledge of the world. Concerning my plans, you are not to utter a single word, I instructed. Leo nodded solemnly. Understood, Your Majesty. But should you uncover hidden truths about ancient history within its pages, you must also remain silent, I added. Yes, Your Majesty, she replied, her tone resolute. With that, I departed the pavilion with Leo and returned to the imperial palace of the Ramon Empire. Following Stephen and the others' disgraceful exit, the once grand and magnificent palace now felt hollow and desolate, its silence almost oppressive. From now on, I said to Leo, you will remain in the palace. I have other matters to attend to. Elsewhere, deep beneath the ocean, the vast kingdom of the Cloud Sea Demon dynasty lay hidden. At the azure seabed, a brilliant array of crystal palaces rose majestically, their shimmering light illuminating the depths. Within these glittering halls resided countless beautiful and alluring female demons, each more enchanting than the last. As I arrived, a blood-red spatial distortion announced my presence above the palaces. Two demonesses immediately noticed my arrival and floated toward me. What a handsome gentleman, one of them murmured with a sly grin. I saw him first. What do you mean? I saw him too, the other retorted, her tone equally teasing. Finders, keepers, the two demonesses, bickering over me as though I were a prize, paid no mind to my indifference. I cast them a cold glance, unmoved. In this vast world, only women like Lily were worthy of my attention. Eventually, the pair reached a consensus. Let him decide, one suggested. Whoever he chooses, that's who he belongs to. Both sets of enchanting eyes turned to me. Since you're here, you can't leave. Choose one of us. One of them declared. I remained silent, my expression calm and indifferent. My lack of reaction caused their delicate brows to furrow. What's with this attitude? One muttered. Why is he ignoring us? Today, you will choose, the other insisted, reaching out to touch my face. Step back if you value your lives. A sultry, commanding voice interrupted before their hands could reach me. The air shifted and a graceful figure emerged from the palace below. She was breathtakingly seductive, clad in a sheer azure silk gown that accentuated her curvaceous figure. Her waist was slender like a serpent's, and her legs, long and flawless, were barely concealed beneath a translucent fabric. Blue scales adorned the corners of her eyes, adding an otherworldly allure. Queen Anna. The two demonesses immediately lowered their heads and stepped aside, bowing respectfully. The woman before me was the ruler of the Cloud Sea Demon dynasty, the queen of all demonesses, Anna. If Lily was the queen of goddesses, then Anna was the queen of demons. Lily was revered as the most divine woman in the world, while Anna was celebrated as the most alluring. Anna's captivating gaze fell upon me, her expression laced with intrigue. I never expected the emperor of the Ramon Empire to visit my Cloud Sea Demon dynasty. The two demonesses, confused, whispered behind her. This is Emperor Ramon. Anna answered with a faint smile. Yes, this is His Majesty, Emperor Ramon. At her words, the two demonesses turned pale and quickly bowed deeply. Your Majesty, please forgive our ignorance. We didn't recognize you. If His Majesty wanted to punish you, do you think you'd still be alive? Anna replied with a teasing smile. Then she turned to me, her voice sweet and playful. Is this Your Majesty's first visit to my Cloud Sea Demon dynasty? Since you're here, why not stay for a while? I promise you'll never want to leave. She stepped closer, raising a hand as if to drape it around my neck, her entire body poised to press against mine. But at the last moment, she hesitated, withdrawing her hand with a coquettish smile. Your Majesty, Bob has gathered the Supreme Origin and is preparing for the final battle. Why have you come here now? I met her gaze, my voice cold. Why did you stop? Anna pouted, her playful tone tinged with mock innocence. If Your Majesty isn't interested, why should I persist? Smart, I replied curtly, ignoring her antics. The Cloud Sea Demon dynasty possesses a treasure, the illusory demon crystal core. Anna's flirtatious demeanor faltered slightly. So that's why you're here. I thought you came for me, she said with a wry smile. Is this crystal core meant to counter Bob? Give it to me, I ordered, my tone broking no argument. Anna's smile returned. If your majesty desires it, how could I refuse? She raised her hand, and a soft glow enveloped her moments later. An ice blue crystal, like a fragment of frozen ocean, materialized in her hand. I extended my hand, taking the crystal directly from her lips, without hesitation. As I turned to leave, Anna spoke again. Your Majesty, since I've given you what you seek, might I ask for a small favor in return? I paused, glancing at her coolly. This is about your classy forbidden zone, isn't it? Her eyes widened in shock. How does your Majesty know about that? I said nothing, simply turning and flying toward the depths of the cloud sea. Come, I commanded. Anna hesitated briefly before following, her curiosity peaked together. We descended toward the forbidden abyss at the heart of the demon dynasty. The ocean's depths growing darker and colder with each passing moment. No one could say how much time had passed before they finally reached the bottom of the abyss. There, at the deepest point, lay a massive and ancient array, its intricate patterns glowing faintly with an eerie luminescence. At the center of the array stood a towering black pillar, its colossal height reaching thousands of feet above the array and stretching tens of thousands of feet beyond into unseen depths below. Where the pillar connected with the array, thick black mist seeped out like a living liquid, squirming and writhing in an unnerving display of malevolence. The entity was clearly sentient, exuding a power so formidable that even the barrier I had personally established could only restrain it for a limited time. It was difficult to fathom the full power of what lay sealed within as a being potentially of the infinite realm. If that were true, its release would be catastrophic. I remained silent, my form gliding toward the center of the array as I descended. The black mist seemed to sense my presence. It began to churn more violently, as if agitated by my proximity. Hovering above the array, I looked down at the black mist, my expression impassive. Then, in a tone as cold as winter frost, I uttered a single word. Leave. The black mist shuddered violently, as though struck by an invisible force. In the next moment, under Anna's astonished gaze, it recoiled in terror, retreating rapidly back into the depths below. The once writhing mist vanished entirely, leaving only the grand array and the towering black pillar standing silent and ominous. Anna's face was a mask of shock and confusion. What was that thing? And why did it seem so afraid of you? You said only one word, and it just fled. Who could have imagined such a thing? She stepped closer, her curiosity driving her forward. Your Majesty, do you know what lies beneath this seal? I cast her a faint glance and replied evenly. In time, you will know. If ever a great calamity befalls this world, you must ensure this place remains untouched. Let no one approach. Is that all? She pressed, her voice tinged with unease. What if it comes out again in a few days? Shouldn't your Majesty strengthen the barrier, or take further precautions? A cold smile played on my lips. Not days, nor years, nor even centuries. It will not emerge again anytime soon. Her brows furrowed, disbelief etched on her face. Can it really be that simple? Just because your Majesty ordered it to leave, it has retreated for good. That thing truly fears you. Remember my words, I said, my tone final. Without elaborating further, I turned and began to leave. Your Majesty, Anna called out suddenly, her voice filled with a peculiar determination. I paused, turning my gaze to her. What is it? She bit her lip lightly, her sultry features tinged with earnestness and a faint trace of resentment. I want your Majesty to remember something as well. What? I asked, my eyes meeting hers. With a deep breath, she said in a steady but vulnerable tone, I am clean. Hearing this, I chuckled softly, a faint amusement flickering across my face. Wait for my return, I replied simply, before leaping into the air and disappearing into the horizon. Anna watched my retreating figure, her hand half raised as though to stop me, but in the end, she let it fall. With a wistful sigh, she murmured to herself, why not just test it yourself? If you tried, you'd know whether or not I'm telling the truth. But if he says he'll return, doesn't that mean I might have a chance next time? Perhaps then, a sly smile spread across her lips, her previous melancholy replaced with a glimmer of hope. Fine, I'll wait for him to return. Elsewhere, amidst a tranquil bamboo forest, a man dressed in flowing white robes sat quietly. His silver white hair fell to his shoulders, and a black gold blindfold covered his eyes. Using a small knife, He carved into a piece of wood, shaping what appeared to be a wooden sword. Yet after only a few strokes, his hand stilled, and he spoke into the silence. If you've come to ask for help against Bob, I can offer my assistance, but even I cannot change the tide. Behind him, on the roof of a humble wooden cabin, I had already arrived, my form silhouetted against the sky. Ted had long expected my visit. Years ago, he had challenged me and suffered a resounding defeat. Though I spared his life, he vowed to repay the debt by aiding me unconditionally should I ever require his help. Now, after so much time had passed, I had finally come to him likely, he assumed, to enlist him in my battle against Bob. Yet as willing as he was to repay his debt, Ted also understood the futility of his power in such a conflict. Even at the peak of the divine sovereign realm, he could not influence a battle against an infinite realm existence born of the supreme origin. "You're right that I've come to seek your aid," I said calmly, stepping down from the roof, "but not to fight Bob." Ted turned to face me, his expression one of mild surprise. "If not Bob, then what trouble could you possibly need help with?" "This war will mark the end of my empire," I said, my hands clasped behind my back. My tone was measured, unhurried. "The lands and titles mean little to me. But there is one place I will not allow to fall into anyone else's hands. After this war, I will need someone to guard it, someone trustworthy, capable, and strong. That person is you." Ted raised a brow. Intrigued, "You're asking me to be a caretaker?" "It is no ordinary place," I replied. "It houses my 3,000 demon army and a seal similar to the one deep within the Cloud Sea demon dynasty. Only someone of your caliber, at the peak of the divine sovereign realm, can hold the line. If you agree, the Imperial Palace and its secrets will be your charge." Ted chuckled softly. "So, you're asking me as a friend?" "No," I said with a faint smile, "as a subordinate." He laughed again, shaking his head. "Fine, then. A subordinate it is, I suppose. It's an honor to serve the Emperor of the Ramon Empire." Ted owed me his life, and he would honor that debt without hesitation. But even without the debt, he knew I was the only one in this world worth standing behind. I nodded. "In this final battle, I need no assistance. Your task begins after it ends. Guard the Imperial Palace. Ensure no one lays hands on what lies beneath it." "And what of you?" Ted asked, his curiosity evident. "If you're assigning me this task, does that mean you won't be around after the battle?" "You're planning to lose, aren't you?" I didn't deny it. "I will need time to return." "Return," he echoed, a glimmer of understanding in his eyes. "Even if I fall, so long as this world exists, I will never truly die," I said. Ted smiled faintly. "Good. In that case, the world won't descend into chaos. There may be some turbulence, but once you return, it will all settle." "Wait for my return," I said, my voice steady. Without another word, I vanished from the courtyard. Ted was left alone, gazing at the spot where I had stood. With a soft chuckle, he picked up his carving knife. The wooden sword he had been shaping was erased with a few strokes, its form reshaped into a ruler. To anyone else, it was merely a piece of wood. But in his hands, it was a sword, a weapon, ready to serve once more. Far above the clouds, on the floating island of Sky Isle, a council of the island's most powerful figures had convened. At the head of the grand hall sat Rocky, the island's ruler, draped in resplendent robes. The Ramon Empire and the Heaven-Earth Alliance are on the brink of war. Rocky began, his voice solemn. "Bob has called upon all forces to join the alliance against the Tyrant. What say you all?" The gathered leaders exchanged glances. Uncertainty etched on their faces. After a long pause, one finally spoke. "Island Lord, I suggest we do not involve ourselves. While Bob has reached the infinite realm, Ramon has ruled unchallenged for countless years. It's impossible to predict the outcome of this battle. If we choose the wrong side, the consequences will be catastrophic." Others nodded in agreement, but Rocky leaned forward. "And yet, I must ask, in your hearts, who do you hope will emerge victorious?" The whole fell silent again. "Bob," someone finally admitted. "If he wins, he may rule as a friend. If Ramon wins, well, we'll have to bow our heads forever." "Exactly," Rocky said with a smile. "So, shall we remain neutral, or should we lend our support to the alliance? Perhaps there's a way to achieve both." Before they could respond, a sudden hum echoed through the hall. All eyes turned as a blood-red distortion appeared in the center of the chamber, and from it stepped Ramon himself. Silence fell, every face pale with fear. Rocky staggered back, nearly losing his composure. Ramon's arrival at this exact moment, just as they were plotting against him, meant only one thing. He had heard everything.